Wow. I don't know what to say after watching that debate. Though I will say I was reminded of 2016 all over again. Constant interruptions, no one could really get a word in. There were some key moments, of course, but if this is what the debate season's going to be like, I'm a little bit worried for both candidates.
I would argue in 2016 that we actually saw a little bit more substance. Tonight, in the first 20, 30 minutes, it was riddled with constant interruption from both sides. While the media would like to say, as the chyrons are demonstrating right now, that it was largely the president who interrupted, I think it went both ways. You had a moment where even the moderator was getting interrupted. Everyone was debating each other, and you had Biden standing there looking at a conversation going on between the president and Chris Wallace. I think everyone can say tonight that we were lacking overall substance. While there were key moments, I don't know that the people at home really got what they were looking for tonight. You're going to have both campaigns that are out claiming victory. They're each going to point to the other one's flaws. Having both of us sat on a campaign prior, you know how that goes. You know that immediately following the debate is when the spin begins, and each candidate is going to point out the moments that best suit their agenda. I don't know that either candidate came out, though, tonight to the American people as a clear winner. Biden was able to show up. He was able to articulate his positions. He definitely had moments where he looked defeated, where you could tell that the president was getting under his skin. I think the president came out strong for the beginning. By the end, the president looked like he wanted off the stage, that he was disinterested, no longer wanted to be there. It was time to be over. And now you're going to see that the debate has ended. You're going to have both candidates and their teams racing to get out their narrative and pull the snippets from tonight. There were lots of them that benefit their argument.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm thinking about the spin that happens afterward, right? I'm thinking for Joe Biden, he focused a lot on the COVID-19 crisis, the economy, and how he would have done something different. Even though he couldn't quite articulate what that was. But he also talked a lot about healthcare tonight as well. And so I think, I used to be a social media director on the trail, trying to take these moments and turn them into bite-sized content. What I would be thinking right now in the war room is, okay, what were Biden's strong points? Where were the moments that he shined? But also, what were some opportunities for us to really emphasize some of those key points that Biden might have missed during the night? One very strong moment I thought for Biden was when he was talking about his son, Beau Biden, and defending him against the president's attacks from that Atlantic article for the most part. He came across as authentic, he came across as very strong, and he looked very presidential in that standpoint. I think a lot of Americans would say he looked like a father who was proud of the work his son had done. I will say Biden also, though, whiffed on a few areas. One in particular is when they were talking about law and order and law enforcement. Unfortunately, Biden couldn't name any organizations that supported him in the law enforcement arena, which was a great missed opportunity and definitely will be probably replayed over and over again with the Republican social media. So right now I'd be looking to, one, try and bolster some of those weaker points that Biden might not have hit, but number two, figure out how I can drive home the issues of healthcare and COVID-19 response. That way Democrats really understand where our candidate stands, and that can live on for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Tonight you saw the president try and box in the former vice president. He wanted to tie him to the progressive left, to get the former vice president to say he supported certain agenda items that the Bernie Sanders voters support, the far left. Even at one moment you had the former vice president defending the fact that he beat Bernie Sanders. No one is questioning that. We all know who the Democratic nominee is, and it is not Bernie Sanders. Yeah. And the president put the former vice president on his back feet there. You're absolutely right. That moment where the former vice president was unable to name even one or to say the number of law enforcement organizations that support him, that was a huge missed opportunity. If you're the Republicans right now, the war room, they're having a heyday with that.
Right.
They're saying, we are the law and order candidate. We've been running on law and order. You claim that you have groups that support you and you can't even name one. On the flip side, I would say the president's biggest mistake tonight was the fact that he didn't unequivocally denounce white supremacy. Yeah. He glossed right over it. That's only going to further add to the list of moments where people feel that he has been given the chance to condemn the organization and instead pivots away, that he doesn't say anything, and his silence to them speaks volumes and almost insinuates that he's leaning in. Whether that's how he meant it to come out or not, he didn't answer that. And he had a clear moment tonight where he could have said, no, I do not support. And not only do I not support, but I condemn the acts.
Yeah, and I think that makes it hard for a lot of people to support the president because of that one issue. If you remember back in, when Charlottesville first happened, a lot of people, wherever you were frightfully upset about that. And this election season, Biden's whole campaign was based off of that one trigger moment that caused him to run for president, which was pretty fascinating. I was not surprised to see some of our local media stories coming in that we've seen over the past week, like the $750 tax burden that, Trump might have paid in 2016 and 2017. But I was surprised that Biden did not take the opportunity to talk about how unfair that was and really drill down on how $750 is less money than you and I have probably paid in taxes during the same time period, and we're not billionaires. Instead, he pivoted towards a message that sounded a lot like Bernie Sanders, that the tax code is simply unfair and unjust, which made it seem like what the president did was actually pretty clever in beating the system. So I was surprised that Biden wasn't able to land some more of those punches there. I will say, though, one of the moments that I'm always going to remember from this debate is that last 7 minutes when we talked about election integrity and what that looks like. I think one of the things that our clients are probably a little worried about is what will happen on November 3rd and November 4th and the weeks following the election. And they're going to ask themselves, what role do we have to play in if there's no clear winner 30 days after the election? And, both candidates kind of went back and forth for a bit where Biden said, whoever the winner is, I'm going to support that person. I'm going to come out strongly for that. You can take it to the bank. But the president refused to come out and make an equivocal statement. And I think that's setting up for us for a recipe for disaster at the end of the year. To me, I think Democrats are going to want to play that over and over again. And I think our clients are probably paying close attention to see if there's a role they might have to play at the end of this year as we kind of struggle towards what's going to be a very long election season. I was relieved to see a little bit of a policy conversation happen between all the mud, and that was about tax rates on corporations and how it affects the bottom line worker. I know, Democrats have a philosophy that says, we need to raise the corporate tax rate to make sure that everyone's paying their fair share, while conservatives talk about job creation and wanting to really make sure that corporations stay in the United States and not move overseas. So I was relieved to see that policy conversation, because I think a lot of our clients are going to hear that conversation and be like, okay, there are some tangible changes we are going to see if Biden were to become president versus a Trump administration. And so I think Biden has shown his hand a bit more about what a Democrat being in charge, even one as you could say moderate as Joe Biden, and what that might look like. We are still slightly unclear, though, about what his environmental policy might look like, for example, and how far left he might travel over the course of the next few years. So I was relieved to see, through all of the bickering and yelling and back and forth, that at least we got into a substantive policy conversation for a little bit.
Absolutely, and I think that the Democrats will need to lean in even further on what those policies are going to be, or otherwise they're leaving an open door for the Republicans to continue to say Joe Biden is going to be a puppet of the far left, that his policies are going to be progressive, they're going to be radical, and until he comes out and states otherwise, that door is wide open to run right through it with an alternative messaging to what the Democratic ticket wants to be conveying. Tonight, what would you say was one of the most snippable moments that we saw coming out this evening? It's
a really good question. I think there's two things that come to mind. The first is one that the Biden campaign has already co-opted on, is when Biden told the president to shut up. He's like, shut up, man. That's already a t-shirt. It's already out there. You can buy it. I think it's $30 on joebiden.com. And I think they're going to play that one backwards. But to me, the moment that I cannot stop thinking about was when the vice president defended his son, Beau Biden, from the president's comments about soldiers being losers. To me, that encompasses the Joe Biden that I think a lot of Americans know, both Republican and Democrat. Someone who has strong family values, who's empathetic, who is very strong-willed, and someone who you could see being the next president of the United States. I also think on a personal level, Joe Biden was able to look into the camera during moments like that and really speak to the American voter. And I felt that any moment where he looked out and said, think about what's happening at your home. Think about what's happening at your house. Think about what you and I are going through. It really stood out. And I think they're going to clip those for social media, and we're going to see those in ads in the coming few weeks. So if you could give Biden some advice, I know we're not in the business of giving advice to the other party, but if there was one piece of advice you'd give him for the next debate, what would it be?
don't let the president get under your skin. And if he does, don't show it. It was very evident at the start of the debate that the president was getting to him. And that's something that was talked about prior to heading into tonight, was would Biden take the bait? Would he fall for these interruptions? Would he fall for the personal attacks and show that it was bothering him? I think he did at the beginning of the debate. He was able to pull himself together as the debate went through. He had his stronger moments, to your point, when he was defending his son. That was the first moment where we saw him stand up to the president, not let the president continue to interrupt him. And no matter what the president tried to interject, it was very clear that the former vice president was going to say his piece. He was going to defend his son. And that is a moment where he looked strong. Contrary to the earlier part of the debate where there were several head hung moments, moments where he tried to say something, got completely run over by what the president was trying to interject, and couldn't get his thought track back on, and consequently just looked deflated.
Yeah. I would tell the president, the next debate, he has some very strong issues that he can speak to. And, I think his argument about the economy is very strong. And I think in many of those moments, he was really caught up in trying to contradict the vice president, that he wasn't able to hit all of those key points. I know it's not for the president's style, but if he could get a few more numbers in there, like, look, we saw straight growth for like 4 quarters, just say something like that. I think he could really come across as looking a little more professional, and moderate voters might say, you know what, I want that. That's kind of what I want here. I think over the next couple of days, we're going to see some stuff from this debate be put out on social media with the Republicans and his campaign. But unfortunately, it was hard for me to find a lot of really good sound bites from President Trump where he wasn't interrupting or where he stayed on topic. And so I think that if he could stay on topic just a little bit more, he might be able to work and convince a few more moderate voters that he would be their pick at the end of the day. Because let's be honest here, Trump used this tactic with Secretary Clinton back in 2016, and it was very effective for him. But I think in an era where we can't spin at the end of the day, he might have to adapt a little more, like lay back just a little bit more, just in order to make sure on social media his message is going to get across. I know that I will be voting this Friday, so I've already made my voting plan. Do you have plans to vote pretty soon?
I do. I'm going to go in person on Election Day.
That's great. Well, I cannot wait to talk about the next debate, which will be Kamala Harris and Mike Pence on October 7th. I have a soft spot for Kamala Harris, so I'm very excited for this one.
Of course.
Awesome. I'll talk to you later, guys.